Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Welcome to the Westchester County McCallion Office Building. We're here today to talk about the fruits of a process that began back in the late spring of 2020. You may recall that we celebrate Memorial Day on the Monday of a Memorial Day weekend as a national holiday. And on that Memorial Day in the morning, there were a few Memorial Day services around Westchester County and across our nation, socially distanced, small numbers of veterans getting together to remember Memorial Day. What you may forget tied into that day was later that evening, in the early part of the evening, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, there was a tragic situation in which George Floyd was murdered, and his murderer, Derek Chauvin, was a member of the Minneapolis police force. In fact, was a senior member of that police force. That incident triggered outrage and a series of social justice marches and cries for change in the way we handle policing all across the United States of America. When we saw that incident happen on that Monday night, we knew that we in Westchester County had to take some action, to take some direct and progressive action to at least assess where we were in this county and what kind of changes and improvements we needed to make. At that point in time, we discussed, Ken Jenkins, who's with me today, is Deputy County Executive, the rest of our executive team. We knew immediately that we needed to impanel a group of individuals to sit down and discuss what we were facing. And we needed to have people from the law enforcement community, from the legal community, from the social justice community to sit together around the figurative virtual tables to discuss what we were facing in our county as one portion of what the nation was facing in all of this. We announced from this podium that we would have a task force that would initially look into those ways in which Westchester County government trains police officers, because we are tasked as a county government with the training of almost all the police officers, the new recruits that come in to work in any of our local police forces, not just the Westchester County Police. And in a short period of time after that, Governor Andrew Cuomo issued an executive order mandate to all organizations, all entities, governmental entities that had a police force to go through a reimagining and reform process. Our initial efforts meshed with those things that Governor Cuomo were asking us to do, and we created, therefore, our police reform task force. That task force has been working since June, and here we are now in February, a year later, 8 months later, and they have sat down and worked distanced in person through the virtual means that we have, and have now presented to us a report for the consideration of the administration in Westchester County and the Board of Legislators in Westchester County. I'm joined today by the chairman of the Board of Legislators, the Honorable Ben Boykin, who will be speaking in a couple of minutes as well. And the fruit of their labor is an analysis that will help us do better, help us reform the things that need to be reformed. Now, the Westchester County Police Department is not the department that does all the policing all across Westchester County. We have, I believe, 40 separate police departments, as large as the city of Yonkers and as small as some of our smallest jurisdictions. And each of those communities are going through the same process and will produce their reports in due time as well. All of these have to have an action taken and submitted to New York State by April 1st for review at the state level, and state funding for police services will be dependent upon the way they assess and evaluate these reports. But Westchester County didn't wait. We knew that we had to take action, but we also knew that we had in place a very good police force that had done some very innovative things on their own, that Westchester County Police had body cams before other police departments did, that they had anti-bias training built into the system. We want to do better. And we want to take the basis of what's good about what we do, correct the things that may not be good, and improve and show a path to the future. And to do that, to have a multiplicity of experiences around the table was important to us. I asked two individuals who are prominent lawyers and also prominent individuals in the area of assessing criminal justice to co-chair this committee, Mayo Bartlett and Leroy Frazier. Both of these gentlemen have served as assistant district attorneys at various times in their career, and they've done a variety of different things. In Mayo's case, he's been a defender in the courts on the side of clients as well, and both of them were working within the county government on contract, Leroy with our Public Safety Department and Mayo with our Human Rights Commission. And we knew that their academic skills, that their professional skills as lawyers, their experiences as district attorneys, which is very important in this to understand the criminal justice process, they could organize a comprehensive look at what we had to deal with. And then we reached out and tapped people from all different sources of our community. We'll go over the list of members who serve on the task force in a second, but I'm very grateful to Mayo, to Leroy, and to all the other individuals who we're going to introduce and thank them for their work. This is, as Winston Churchill said, not the beginning of the end, but the end of the beginning. But the work that's before us today now gives the Board of Legislators and our executive branch the starting off point for changes and reforms that we can implement either by executive order, by legislative action at the county level, or by recommendation for action to the state level that would help us do exactly what we want to do, which is improve the situation that we have. We owe it to George Floyd, and we owe it to that moment in that night in May when a tragedy happened, and we didn't turn our back from the tragedy. We turned to work to deal with that tragedy. So I'd like to ask, and I'll introduce each of these folks to say a few words. I'd like to ask first Mayo Bartlett to join us at the microphone, to be followed by Leroy Frazier, the two co-chairs of this effort. First, Mayo Bartlett.
Thank you very much, George. I have to say it's been a true pleasure, number one, working with Westchester County and following on the vision of County Executive George Latimer and Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins, as well as the visions of our Westchester County Board of Legislators. And it's been a tremendous pleasure working with my colleague Leroy Frazier, as well as all of the other members of the task force. And in my estimation, our job was made tremendously easy when you look at the fact that this was a process that was started before the governor's mandate. And in my estimation, it shows that Westchester County was invested in trying to make sure that we addressed issues that occurred in Minneapolis, but also with the understanding that each community may have its own George Floyds, and that Westchester County has lost individuals also to police shootings, and that we recognize those individuals as well. And toward that process, we worked to make sure that we could imagine best practices throughout Westchester County Police Department. And that's with the understanding that the department fortunately did many things well. And in our report, we reflect many of the things that they did well already before we even began. And to the department's credit, I also must say that as the working groups came up with recommendations, quite often the Westchester County Department of Public Safety would take those recommendations and already work to implement them before they were even voted on, if they thought it was a good idea. So we have endeavored to make sure that we are going to leave the Westchester County Police Department in a better footing than it is right now, and so that 20 or 30 years from now, when young people are asked what happened in Westchester County with respect to policing, they will look and see that not only did we look at reforms that were required, but we truly embraced the concept of reimagining what police should be. And that meant reviewing to what degree are the disciplines that police engage in things that they should properly be working on their own, to what degree should they be partnering with other professionals, and to what degree should we be looking at other resources as the primary responders. And at this stage, to follow on what George has said, we don't consider this to be an endpoint. We realize that what we're doing is going to be a living body of work, and that if we're going to do our job well, that we will from time to time continue to review best practices. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we were very, very fortunate to have a number of law enforcement professionals throughout Westchester County who partnered with us. And that included several chiefs of police from our local municipalities who gave their time very graciously and openly and honestly worked with us and shared their insight in terms of things that could be improved, whether it was looking at civil service law or whether it was looking at ways that perhaps the departments could invest in shared services. All of their effort has allowed us to have some measure of success, and I think that as we continue to move forward and to work together, ideally we will bridge the gaps between law enforcement and the community. So I want to thank all of the members of the task force. I thank my colleague Leroy Frazier. I thank certainly County Executive George Latimer, and again, I thank Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins. It's been a pleasure.
And now Leroy Frazier, co-chair of the committee.
I'd like to join my co-chair in thanking the county executive and deputy county executive and all the members of the task force for their hard work over these last 7 months or so. This has not been a walk in the park. It's been an effort that was the result of lots of hard work, hours of research, and lots of discussion in order to present a report that we feel will be for the best betterment in Westchester County public safety. One of the things you'll see once you have a look at the report is that there's an underlying theme that deals with training, transparency, and accountability. And we've sought to make the proper suggestions so that we can reach our goals, and making sure that that the police throughout Westchester are able to step up and have this relationship with the community, where there is a relationship of trust and there's a relationship of understanding. As was previously said, we found that there was a lot of good that was already being done by the Westchester County Police Department. They train many more hours than are required by the New York State Department of Criminal Justice Services. But as the county executive said, when you're doing good, our job was to look and see what we can determine and what ways you can do even better. And so even in the process, while we were discussing the training, we thanked the Commissioner Gleason because they agreed that they would expand the training in certain specific areas, such as cultural competency and implicit bias. These represent efforts in which goals can be reached for total trust between the community and the police. Again, I join Mayo. Mayo speaks so eloquently. I got to know him a lot more during these last 7 months than I thought I needed to. But I will say that it's been a pleasure to work with him, as it was a pleasure to work with all the members of the different working groups and coming together. I hope that you have an opportunity to read the report. And if you have questions, if you have things that you'd like us to know about it, you can write in to us about it. And we will continue, and we'll do what we can to serve the people here in Westchester County. Thank you.
Thank you, Leroy. Next, I'd like to ask Blanca Lopez, who is the point person on this report from our executive team. She's one of our senior leaders in the operations field. Blanca.
Thank you, County Executive. I would like to thank the 38 members of this task force, including our co-chairs, Mayo Bartlett and Leroy Frazier, for their commitment and hard work throughout this 7-month-long journey. I would also like to take this opportunity to commend and thank my colleagues who worked with me as staff liaisons in this project. They were chosen by the county executive, and it has been an honor to work with a group of such energetic individuals who invested a lot of their professional and personal time to serve in this committee. And I just want to take a moment to recognize them. My colleagues from the 9th floor, Crystal Collins and Copernicus Crane; from the Department of Probation, Sherilyn Pulver; from the Law Department, Jason Whitehead; and from the Solid Waste Commission, Perry Kadanoff. Each of these individuals played a crucial role in the formation of this report. Each of them were important in terms of moving the conversation forward within their own respective working groups, and were able to transform the dialogue from research and discussion to that of the formation of solid recommendations that eventually resulted in the 51 recommendations you have in this report. And to just give a brief review of the types of recommendations that you can find in this report. For example, we ask for the county's Department of Public Safety homepage to be available to people who do not speak English as their preferred language. For the department to have a clearer description of the role that they play in Mount Kisco and the town of Cortland. For the department to establish a stronger media presence. And also, a very important topic that we discuss time and time again is how to respond to calls related to the mentally ill. And we wanted to make sure that we looked at best practices throughout the country. We looked at the CAHOOTS program that was established in Oregon, and we have several recommendations addressing these particular types of calls that public safety must address. I think I can speak for all of us when I say that we are very proud of this report. And now we look forward for the legislative review that will be conducted by the Board of Legislators. And most importantly, we look forward to the final round of public comments. We are eager to hear from the Westchester County community And following the guidelines of the governor's executive order, we will incorporate these comments into what will be the final report that will be submitted in April. On a personal note, I want to thank the county executive, the deputy county executive, the director of operations, Joan McDonald, for selecting me to lead this staff and to be a lead in this project. I am honored to have had this opportunity to work with such amazing individuals and to contribute for positive change in the county. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Blanca. Next, we're going to hear from Commissioner Sheriff Tom Gleason, who is the head of our Department of Public Safety. Commissioner Gleason, along with Deputy Commissioner Terrence Rayner, also Sergeant Michael Hagan, who heads the Westchester County Police Benevolent Association, served as county police officials on this committee, and they put their input into these discussions. As I said to the group before we came out here, we did not put our thumb on the scale. We invite them to say whatever they want to say. We said the same for our law enforcement professionals. There was certainly vigorous dialogue. There was disagreement. There remains issues that we want to work through as well, satisfactorily, because not everybody has the same point of view on these things. But we're very appreciative in Commissioner Gleason for the time and the energy and the professionalism that he put into this work. Commissioner Gleason.
I want to thank all the members of the Police Reform Task Force for their time, efforts, and dedication to this process over these past 7 months. I received the final draft report yesterday, and I look forward to a detailed review of its recommendations for our department and for the broader law enforcement community. There was an incredible amount of work put in by all members as we reviewed many of the training programs, policies, and procedures of the Westchester County Department of Public Safety and of the Westchester County Police Academy, and we looked at possible ways to improve upon what we do. I'm extremely proud of our police department and the work that we do each and every day to keep the people of Westchester safe. I believe here in Westchester County, we have been proactive and ahead of the curve in many areas of our training, such as procedural justice, implicit bias, de-escalation, duty to intervene, and crisis intervention, to name just a few. I believe that our department, as a New York State Department of Criminal Justice Services accredited agency, can serve as an example for other departments in our training, professionalism, policies, and procedures. One thing I did learn through the many hours of discussions and public forums throughout this process was that we in law enforcement need to do a much better job of educating the public on what we do here in Westchester. That being said, I look forward to reviewing the recommendations of this task force. We are always open to positive change and improving whatever we do. I also look forward to the recommendations this group can forward to the state of New York to mandate that all law enforcement agencies in the state adhere to the highest standards of recruitment, candidate selection, training, supervision, and professional conduct.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Gleason. And now we're going to hear from a couple of the members who served on the task force. First, Corinne Patino, a lawyer based in Mount Kisco.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank County Executive George Latimer, Deputy County Executive, for giving me the opportunity to be part of this amazing task force. I'd like to thank my task force members and my small working group, the community engagement group. We had a unique opportunity to listen to the concerns of the community, and the community did their part. We took part in many public forums where people were able to call in, to send us emails. I received a lot of messages on the side as well, and I'm happy to incorporate what I learned from the community to my ideas and to the task force. I'd like to extend an invitation to the community to continue to voice their concerns, their suggestions, their ideas to us, because as County Executive mentioned earlier, this is just the start of amazing positive change. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Corinne. And I want to highlight that Corinne, who is an attorney at law, was suggested for the committee as well by Mayor Gina Piccinich, who is the mayor of the village of Mount Kisco. And Mount Kisco, you heard reference, Mount Kisco and Cortland are two municipalities that use the county police as all a part of their day-to-day police work. So coming out of the Mount Kisco community was particularly important as we deal with these changes. Next, I'd like to introduce another attorney at law. I think we're surrounded by attorneys, but very talented individual, Robin Schlesinger. Robin?
Thank you, County Executive Latimer. Thank you, Deputy County Executive Jenkins, co-chairs Mayo Bartlett and Leroy Fraser, all of the members of the task force, all 38. Thank you, Corrine. I want to echo the sentiments that Corrine just expressed. I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to be part of this very unique effort. I want to really emphasize the fact that I did the very best I could to represent the LGBTQ advisory board, the county's advisory board, which was recently codified, and trying to represent the interests of those individuals as well as all other residents of the county in my participation on this task force as well as the community engagement working group. We put forth a number of recommendations that I hope will be accepted by the governor when he receives our report. I think they address many of the issues that are of concern to the community at large. We've made enormous progress in the last several years, and we are still a long way, however, from being where we want to be. And I'm just absolutely proud to be part of this effort. And hopefully, as the task force continues its work, we will make even more progress. I encourage those of you who want to send us comments and concerns to please do so. I think everyone on the task force really tried to get as much feedback as they possibly could from the community and to reflect those concerns in all of our work. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity, and I think I'll turn it back to the county executive. Thank you again.
Thank you, Robin. And the third member of the task force that we're going to invite to share a few thoughts about his experience with it is Attorney Thomas Luzio. Thomas?
I want to thank the county executive. It was an honor to be a part of the task force. So I want to thank Mayo and Leroy and the other 35 members that were part of the task force. I'm proud of the recommendations that we put forth. I was in part probably tapped to this because I had 30 years as a prosecutor and 38 years in law enforcement, but that isn't what defined my role in this task force. I think those things I learned from my parents and many others in my life, which is just simply empathy, empathy for the entire community. And I say that because I believe that these recommendations are and will be a blueprint for the 40 other police departments and communities within our county, how they can improve it there. And what I've heard a lot is we may not have that problem here. But I think that this and these recommendations are a blueprint for empathy and to look at your entire community and try to follow through on some of the things that we've recommended here. I want to thank everybody again for letting me be a part of this.
Thank you very much, Tom. So this report has three recipients, structural recipients, that have the responsibility of evaluating it and then taking action within our lanes. The first recipient is the county administration, myself, Kent Jenkins, Joan McDonald, and the rest of the executive team. Some of the recommendations manifest themselves as executive orders, which fall within the power of the county executive. Some of them are policy changes that fall within the direction of the commissioner sheriff of the county police department, and of course, as we are managers of the full government, in consultation with those of us in the executive branch. The second constituency is the Westchester County Board of Legislators. There are recommendations here that naturally lend themselves to legislation. The legislative process is a longer process than the executive order process because it requires a number of decision makers to sit and discuss and feel comfortable with an idea. There's a requirement that there be public notification, public hearing as appropriate before the legislature can act. And then, of course, when they act on a law and act, then the executive branch has the opportunity to sign it. And the third recipient of this is those in state government, because there are some recommendations here that revolve around what the state of New York should do. In that regard, those of us in county government are recommenders and advocates, but we're not the final action. We know that in that area, we have talked to those members who represent Westchester County in the New York State Senate and the New York State Assembly. And when they will receive this report, they will meet with the task force to go over just those topics that relate to the state action so that they can fully understand the thinking of the leadership of this task force. And of course, because you're dealing with the state of New York, you're dealing with all 62 counties, city of New York, and 57 other counties. So all three of us are recipients of this report. And of course, between the executive and the legislative branches, we will be working together. But head of a separate, distinct body of county government is the Board of Legislators, and the chairman of that board, I'd like for him to come to the microphone, the Honorable Ben Boykin.
Thank you, County Executive George Latimer and Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins and Director of Operations Joan McDonald and other members of your executive team that have been so involved in doing this. I'm Ben Boykin, Chairman of the Westchester County Board of Legislators. After 7 months of outstanding work, the county's Police Reform and Reimagining Task Force is ready for the board's review. I'd like to thank you, County Executive, for being proactive in working to examine police practices prior to receiving Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 203. And I'd like to thank all members of the task force, co-chaired by Mayor Bartlett and Leroy Frazier, for their diligent and cooperative work. Also, the legislators that were included as part of the task force, Public Safety Chair Colin Smith, legislators Terry Clemens, Damon Marr, and Kitley Koval. The challenge of equity, diversity, and modernization are not new, and the adoption of this report will not end our need to continually examine how we're doing and make adjustments when and where necessary. But the historic moment that we find ourselves in the wake of the murder of George Floyd and the public outcry over his death and the death of so many others, has presented us with a rare opportunity. It is an opportunity that we must seize and use the moments to make us all better. And we all remember seeing on Memorial Day last year the murder of George Floyd played out in front of us. And let me take one moment of personal privilege. We see it on TV. But it hit home to me personally 2 weeks later when I discovered that my high school math teacher, who is still living, is George Floyd's uncle. And the board prepared a memorial resolution for him. He's still living, soon be 92. I want to say that it is gratifying that the work of this task force has been so broad and so cooperative among community activists, police organizations, lawmakers, and more. It shows that positive change is possible through cooperation and goodwill. So it is now the job of the Board of Legislators to take a deep dive into this report and its recommendations. We will assess if any local laws need to be passed or amended. We will hear from constituents we represent and from members of the task force. In the end, we will adopt a plan that will make Westchester a better place. And that's really our most important job as legislators, to leave our county a better place when we leave than when we first took office. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In a few seconds, I'm going to hand you the document, but we're first going to go to the press for any questions that they may have. We're joined in studio by Tony Aiello from CBS out of New York City. We have others who have communicated through Catherine Chaffee, and she'll direct those questions, and we'll repeat the name of the reporter so that we know that those have been asked. And obviously you can direct it to any of us here, the two co-chairs of the committee, the Deputy County Executive, myself, or the Chairman of the Board of Legislators, and we'll do our best to try to answer it thoroughly. So Tony Aiello from WCBS TV.
Thank you, Mr. Latimer. I wondered if one of the chairs could tick off what you view as, or perhaps both of you, the top 2 or 3 recommendations in there. And I wonder, there are some high-profile recommendations and what would strike some people as obvious. I wonder if there's anything in there that you think is a little more subtle but will have a profound impact that perhaps doesn't jump out on first reading of the report.
Gentlemen, to the microphone. You can both go if you like.
Well, certainly, when you talk about subtly, you talk about little things that are being trained within the academy. And so when you talk about training, and the report talks about training for particular areas such as implicit bias, some is already being done. We suggested in the report that they bring in outside experts to co-train in some of those areas. Certainly, also, when you talk about, if you want to know about highlights, I would start with the Police Accountability Board. Quite frankly, as you know, Westchester County Police Department has only two cities, towns, that being Cortland and Mount Kisco, and all the parks and parkways. However, they do, and so with the Police Accountability Board, as it is designed or set out in the report, it sort of mimics the CCRB, but it also allows and recommends that other counties may opt in through shared services and be a part of it, so that if anyone is involved in any type of incident with the police in one jurisdiction and they live in another jurisdiction, the aim would then be for them to be able to file a complaint in one location if in fact the opt-in occurs.
Thank you. Yes, and I agree 100% with what Leroy said. I think that one of the things that was very enlightening for us was the realization that throughout New York State, only 25% of the police departments are actually accredited, and in Westchester County, only 50%. So the recommendation for statewide legislation that would require accreditation of all police departments is essential, and I certainly join with him regarding the Office for Police Accountability. It's our mindset that it's critical that the public be able to have a transparent process that they can believe in, and it's equally important that the police have the same. And we have many smaller departments in smaller communities where it would be very, very difficult for them to be able to have their own civilian complaint review board. So we envision the Office for Police Accountability as being able to fill the role that will relieve the departments from either having the stigma on the part of the community if there's a finding of no misconduct, or sometimes within the department itself if there's a finding of misconduct. The other highlight, though, that I think we definitely should discuss is ABLE. And ABLE followed off of EPIC, which came from New Orleans shortly after Katrina in response to some of the alleged police atrocities for people who were trying to flee flooded communities, largely black and brown people in New Orleans. And Jonathan Aroney, who was the court-appointed monitor for the New Orleans Police Department, through his law firm, began the work of ABLE, which is now partnered with Georgetown Law School, and it focuses on active bystandership for law enforcement. And in my estimation, it can be transformative, because what it does is it addresses conduct. It requires bystandership so that people cannot simply stand by and allow what happened to George Floyd to happen. And it focuses on officer wellness and, as a consequence, community wellness. So if an officer is put into the position of making sure that they are held accountable and that their well-being is being considered by their fellow officers, then we quite often don't have incidents that we have to later try to undo.
If I could just follow up real quick, sir. I want to make sure I understood what you just talked about there, the ABLE and the bystandership. It always struck me that one of the most shocking things about watching that terrible video of what happened to George Floyd was the fact that there were other cops standing there apparently doing little or nothing to stop it. Now, some of them were rookies, and maybe a rookie doesn't feel empowered to speak out in that moment. You want that to change, I take it.
Absolutely, and ABLE specifically focuses on what you said. And during presentations, there are examples that are given to officers. Sometimes the examples come from other officers who found that ABLE is very successful. It's been transformative in their personal and professional lives. So we're looking at it from the standpoint that you addressed a hierarchy in terms of being a junior or senior officer, but replace that with right and wrong and with an overall holistic view of well-being, so that if you see another officer is not doing their job, whether it's that they didn't handcuff someone properly, which ultimately led to a death, or that they are not themselves, they're not treating people in the community in a manner in which they should, then every officer in that department is enabled to be able to step up and to hold that officer accountable tell that officer where they see the shortcomings, and do so in a non-punitive manner. So when ABLE works to its full capabilities, we don't have a disciplinary process. It's because we don't have transgressions in the first place.
Okay, I'm going to give the next question that we have remotely. It's from Nadia from News 12 Westchester. She asks, the recommendation to implement Project Active Bystandership, would that be for county police or for the academy as well? And what does that training entail?
Well, I'll speak to the implementation of it. And this is the subject of what we will discuss in the executive branch and do so in context of the leadership of our Department of Public Safety to look at what the implementation of that particular project would look like, how far we may have already implemented it, because many of these things the county police are already doing. We want to identify where it would be and how far it would go in addition to what we're doing now. And then we assume that in adopting that as a policy for the county police, we would then look at including it in our curriculum for teaching at the academy for people who are rookies, and then especially, and then also for whoever there's in-service training for existing police officers that may go back for additional training and so forth. We can do that unilaterally within the county government. Each local police department, which are doing these same kinds of analyses through the local government and their local police task force, could then also implement those programs. And we think, as has happened many times before in the county police department, other aspects of county government, if we take the leadership in a particular fashion, then that becomes a model that other departments will look at and potentially adopt as well.
Okay. And the next question, also from Nadia, and it's our final question, is how would the shared body camera database work, and why would it help?
I'm going to see if Leroy or Mayo can talk about that particular proposal, shared body camera database.
One of the perceived impediments in terms of having body camera and dash cam data is the cost of storing the data and maintaining that video so that it exists for a long enough period for us to be able to access it, whether through the appellate process or if down the road the case is somehow revisited. So what we believe is that if we're able to have the local municipalities buy in along with the county, we'd be able to have a shared services model where we'd be able to reduce the cost and make sure that for, in particular, some of our smaller and sometimes less affluent communities, that they will be able to fully engage in the use of body cameras as well as dash cams without having to worry about the cost becoming prohibitive. The thought also is that as we add additional municipalities, we'd be able to have a lower rate for the usage of the program.
That was the final question.
Thank you.
Very good. I have the privilege of being on the other end of the handoff. Once upon a time, in his day, Ken Jenkins was chairman of the Board of Legislators. And once upon a time, 10 years before that, I was the chairman of the Board of Legislators. And I was on the receiving end of moments like this. So now I'm very happy that my friend Ben Boykin will receive this, except as I said before, in handing a copy to the Board of Legislators, it becomes now a shared responsibility between the executive branch and the legislative branch to review the process. But I want to reinforce what Ben just said a few seconds ago. The legislative body is a public body in the way they function. So for those of you who are going to read this report, you'll see it online, a host of other places, and you want to comment on it, there will be those opportunities before the Board of Legislators before any final actions are taken. And so, Mr. Chairman, this is the work of the committee. Together, I guess we can't shake hands yet, but together we will do our best. Let me put my mask on to discuss this, and by April 1st, we'll put something in the hands of the governor that hopefully he will like and appreciate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. I just want to close with a couple of comments, and I appreciate particularly Mayo Bartlett and Leroy Fraser and their leadership in leading this group. I want to thank every member of the group. You saw a few of them here today. There are many others whose names are listed in the report. Each one serve their community, and the committee does not go out of business today. They're going to continue to meet, be available to help implement elements of the report. I've already indicated that they'll have some outreach to the state legislative delegation to deal with the state level of recommendations. And then we in the executive branch will consult with them as we deal with those things that are within our authority as an executive branch. And then ultimately, when we work with the Board of Legislators on items that are legislative. So we appreciate that Leroy and Mayo will continue in their service, and the other people you met here today and the rest of the committee will continue to be impaneled. This means more work for Blanca Lopez just when she thought she was off the hook, and the other members of the team. I just want to close with one general comment. And I think this is an important, it's an important time. It's an important moment, not just for Westchester County. This is the level of government that we function at, and we have to work in this. But there's really a question in the society today. As a society, are we prepared to deal with the problems of the day in front of us, or are we going to try to kick the can down the road and deal with it at some future point in time and let somebody that inherits our moment in time have to deal with them? When I'm here with an annual budget, as I have now a couple of times, and presented to Chairman Boykin, it is a one-year document. It's a one-year document that gets replaced a year later by another document. But this police reform effort is not meant to be a one-year situation. It is meant to be something that would last the test of time, in the same way that when we repaired the pools down on Jackson Avenue for the Sprain Ridge Park, or when we rebuilt the Miller House, Washington headquarters, we did that knowing that the lifespan of those physical constructions would far exceed our time in the arena and, truthfully, exceed our time on the planet. What we're doing today isn't a building, it isn't a pool, but it has the same sense of permanency. What we hope to do is to address the problems that exist. It exists in Westchester County, it existed in Minneapolis, it exists everywhere in this nation. And to try to address it in a way that will span time, that we can see improvement. We have many excellent men and women in law enforcement. And this is a moment for the very good members of law enforcement to feel proud of the career that they've chosen, and for us to make sure that every member of law enforcement reaches that same standard of accomplishment and ability. And that's what we want to see happen. And in the community where we have issues that lead to moments where police and community interact, that to the greatest extent possible, those moments are moments that deal with a problem, maybe deal with an illegality, but do it in a way that doesn't create tragedy and doesn't create the further exacerbation of tensions and stress. I grew up in a neighborhood for which those tensions existed every day, and those tensions are never far below the surface, and anything can become a flashpoint. We don't want the flashpoint. We want us to look to the future with some optimism, and we don't want to avoid dealing with the issues of the day. We don't want to turn to resentment and to animosity as a political or governmental strategy. We want to look for a strategy that unifies us, that brings us together, that gives us a path through this dark wood to something beyond that we can feel proud about. Our time in the arena is limited. Our time on this planet is limited. But it falls to us today to deal with this issue. And that is exactly what we intend to do. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Thank you for watching. Do reach out to us, communications@westchestergov.com, on this issue or any of the other issues, and we'll see you on Thursday for an update on the COVID crisis. Thank you much. Have a good day.